Hey guys, FilthyRobot here, bringing you the guides, tips, and tricks video. This time we're talking about the Scythian Empire. Let's talk about their bonuses. Well, first up, Killer of Cyrus. All units receive +5 combat strength when attacking wounded units, and when they eliminate a unit, they heal up to 50 hit points. This is absurd. Truly, honestly, ridiculously absurd as a set of bonuses right there. These are awe-inspiring bonuses based on the strength there. 5 combat strength is a lot in the early game. The biggest set of units, the first set of units you're going to see a ton of combat with. You might see a little bit of combat with archers, maybe some archer rushing going on, but a lot of times the first units that are really going to roll out as the strong military units are those strong horse units, things like horsemen. Horsemen have 30 combat strength. +5 combat strength is a pretty significant chunk of extra combat strength that is going to be added to these units. And these double bonuses here, the extra combat strength versus wounded units combined with the heal, allows for very aggressive use of your units. Whereas you might, especially in multiplayer simultaneous play, be worried about if you slam a unit, you might lose that unit might die from being overextended, or if it survives in low health, it might be killed the next turn before you can assign your heal promotion. These things aren't a worry for Scythia. They're going to be able to get those last hit heals, and 50 hit point heal is a really big deal. It basically more than negates the cost of attacking another unit. So the damage that your unit takes, especially as a, clearly as a melee unit here, not as a ranged unit, the damage that you take when you're attacking a unit is going to almost always, unless the combat strength are massively different, be less than 50 hit points. So this is just an incredibly strong ability for them. But it's not necessarily even their strongest ability. I think it, across the course of the game, maybe, but in the early era, although this is strong, I think the people of the steppe is actually very slightly stronger. Late game, I think this a little bit stronger. Mid game, early game, I think people of steppe a little bit stronger. And that is they receive a second light cavalry unit or a Saka horse archer every time they train a light cavalry unit or a Saka horse archer. I don't think all that much of the Saka horse archer. It's okay. The Saka horse archer, can we just build it at start? I think it's just 0. It might be horseman tech. Let's take a quick look. Yeah, it is horseman tech. So it is a 25 combat strength ranged unit with a mobility of 4, but does not require horses and costs 100 production. All that's pretty reasonable. Only has one ranged tile that it can attack. So it has to be adjacent to the enemy to attack, although it does not take counterattack damage. It's really not bad. It's nothing great though. If you look, archers are a similar combat strength, also range 25, although it looks like the Saka horse archer has a little bit, no, same melee strength. So they're basically a archer that moves 4 tiles and has to attack adjacent to a unit and has 2 upkeep as opposed to 1 upkeep. They're okay. They're not great, but they're not bad. Getting 2 of them starts to make them a little bit better. If every time you train one you get 2, which is the Scythian ability, that's going to be pretty damn nice. But honestly, better than that is the Horseman. The Horseman, as it stands, is the premier early game combat unit. It's fast enough and mobile enough to actually be useful. It has really nice bonuses, and it gets very, very nice bonuses towards production. This is again in the Civ6 tree, the maneuver military policy, which is 100% production towards ancient and classical era heavy and light cavalry units, make that unit very easy to get bonuses to. So you're going to be getting a lot of these, and with the Scythia bonus, getting 2 of these every time you build them is amazing. Just a great ability for Scythia. They're going to be scary in the early game. They're going to be quite good in the mid game. They're going to have units on hand, and they're going to have a lot of damage, a lot of ability to overwhelm the opponent with those early, because they're just literally half as expensive for Scythia as they are for anybody else. And that's really, really good. Let's talk about the rest of the bonuses, because these aren't bad either. Talked about Saka horse archer, but it is a nice, fast, mobile, ranged unit that can keep pace with the horsemen and allow you to be very aggressive, especially with the healing promotions that you get from them. Normally, you might have to be a little bit cautious with the ranged unit because it's a little bit more fragile versus melee attacks. But if you're able to last hit with your horse archers, you can get very, very aggressive with the healing. But let's talk about the Kurgan. This is their unique tile improvement. Let's look it up to get the full text for it. Kurgan. All right, +1 faith and 1 gold, and you get an additional extra faith for every adjacent pasture, and it cannot be built on hills. This is a fairly good tile improvement. I don't really like many of the tile improvements. I think mostly they are too situational to be very useful, especially when they give yields that are not food or production. or even culture in the early game. I don't think they tend to be all that good. But Scythia has a couple things going for it. Scythia seems to have some sort of horse bias or pasture bias. I'm not sure which it is quite yet. I actually believe it may be horse bias. But they spawn an awful lot of the time with some sort of pasture in their capital. Additionally, there is a very nice pantheon that synergizes with having pastures, and that's +1 culture from pastures, which is really strong in the early game, because in the early game you don't have very much culture. You have a little bit of culture from your population and a little bit of culture from the palace, and often investing in a monument is just a little bit slow for the early game. So you tend not to build monuments all that early. You tend to do things like builders and scouts, and then there's a couple military units to take care of barbs, and then you kind of want to get a settler going before all the good land is taken. And when you settle a city, you need to kind of get a builder out there to get it going, and suddenly you're turn 30 or turn 40 when you don't have a monument out. So you don't have a lot of early game culture. This is essentially one of the ways that Scythia can skyrocket to snowball, is perhaps the word I'm looking for, into an even more powerful civ than they already are. And that is the combination of early game inspirations. The craftsmanship inspiration is to boost, improve 3 tiles. People tend to want to hit this pretty early. It's a lot of early game culture to get. It's essentially 20 early game culture on this game speed. It's half the cost of this thing, which is really going to get you towards the things that you want to do. Things like maneuver for getting those extra military production out for your buildings, for your military units, excuse me. And then later on to get into philosophy, which requires that as well to get your early government out. Both of those are really nice things to have. One of the things a Scythian worker can do that the other ones can't is it can produce one of those Kurgans. The Kurgan gives them extra faith generation. The extra faith generation means that they can very quickly get a pantheon. The pantheon they pick up gives them culture. That gives them very good early game culture. Then you never have to work the Kurgans again, but you've used it to get what you wanted, which is the cultural improvement early from a quick, strong pantheon that synergizes with your start bias. Pretty awesome. All of their bonuses essentially synergize together. The aggressive damage and healing, as well as the ability to spam a lot of units cheaply for them, combined with a ranged unit that's as fast as their melee units, combined with something that a unique building that synergizes with their getting their early game snowballing. Scythia is a snowball civ. If you're not careful, they will take your cities or the cities around you or the city-states around you and use this to very quickly build up an empire in a military manner in a way that you might not be able to do with the civ you're doing. They do run into some small problems, and those are actually based on the era. So the way that upkeep works for units is era based. So in the ancient era, your units have 1 upkeep. Kind of. The starting units you have, the slinger, the warrior, the worker, who's also called a builder, the settler, and the scout have no upkeep costs. They do not cost you gold per turn to upkeep. However, once you start producing the first tier of upgraded units, the archers or the spearmen or the heavy chariots, those have 1 upkeep. And if you go a little bit further, units like the horseman and the horse archer have 2 upkeep. So these start to get fairly expensive, especially when you're spamming them in bulk like you do, or in mass like you do with Scythia. Now, there is currently an existing exploit that is going to be patched out at some point. There's no announcement on this, but it's just I can just tell it is not what the developers intended, and that is essentially, especially on the very faster speeds, when you have the really sick production bonuses towards things like light cav, and you're getting 2 light cav when you finish that as opposed to 1 as part of the Scythia bonus. You can actually currently delete units for gold at a rate that is more efficient. You can then use that gold to purchase buildings, which is at a rate more efficient than you'd be able to build those buildings directly. And it also makes upkeep costs a thing of not something to be worried about, a thing of the past, because you're making so much gold from deleting units, and you're creating so many units per turn out of your cities that you don't really care about gold, and it's not really a problem at all. But that is a short-term thing. That will be either through modding or through balance patches, or both is going to be reduced in the future, and not something you're going to actually see be realistic or viable in multiplayer play. So there is something to worry about in the long-term playing of Scythia, and that is your upkeep costs, because essentially they swarm their opponent with very powerful, very early game units, and if you're not careful, you can cripple your economy with that type of negative gold that you're going to be generating from that. So there will be a little bit of that, but overall, extremely powerful civ, something to be worried about. I say this a lot, and you're going to be hearing this a lot in these videos. The earlier your unique unit, the more of an impact it's going to have on the game. It doesn't matter if you have a super awesome, amazing jet fighter improvement that's 3 times as strong. It doesn't friggin' matter, but it comes into play too late to be relevant to the bulk of the game. So that might break a tie in the end game, but 99% of the time, imagine you had a much, much stronger unit at like right here, for example, in which case that tie would never get, you'd never get to a position where there's a tie in the first place. So strong units in the early game, especially strong mobile aggressive units in the early game that synergize with your racial abilities, your Civ's abilities, are going to be extremely powerful. And Scythia, of course, has this very, very early bonus towards Saka horse archers and a horseman. And I'm seeing players do this already. It is so quick to get to horseback riding. These are the prerequisites for horseback riding. Ready? Animal husbandry. That's it. So you build a worker, you build a kurgan in a pasture. The pasture boosts horseback riding. So now that you have half off horseback riding, you improve both your horses. You get your faith, you get your pantheon rolling, you get your culture rolling, so suddenly you're doing sick culture, and you tech up for military tradition, half off already for craftsmanship for getting the worker, improving those 3 tiles, half off for clearing a barb camp, makes that super, super fast, and suddenly you can very, very, very rapidly start producing horsemen right off the bat if you want to be as aggressive as you possibly can with them. And I'm seeing players do this already because it's so difficult to stop. The counter unit to light cav is supposed to be spearmen, and spearmen are not particularly great right now. Melee in general are just not very good in Civ6. The way the new movement system works means that fast units are where it's at, and it is very difficult to stop lots and lots of fast units. And additionally, cities received a nerf essentially from Civ5 to Civ6. They are less defensive. Not only do they miss their city shot, but they seem to do overall less counterattack damage to units attacking into them. In other words, it is easier to take cities with masses of early game melee units than it has ever been before, which means that early horseman rushes from Scythia with a couple of Saka horse archers to back it up are going to be scary effective coming at you. So it's going to be something to be worried about. Anyways, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button. Just come check out my content in general. I both stream on Twitch as well as produce on YouTube. So you'll see a lot of me about and playing a lot of Civ6 multiplayer in the upcoming weeks and months, as I really like the basic mechanics of this game. I think it has some huge potential. So thanks for watching. Come check out my other guide videos. I'll be doing each of the civilizations, breaking down each of the civilizations for you guys and talking about the abilities that each of them have. So thanks for watching. FilthyRobot out. See you guys soon.